So, you got a kick-ass fighting game for your PlayStation 3, such as this, Mortal Kombat, and from what I'm hearing, PSN is back online. But unless you go out and make a huge investment in a fighting stick, you only have something like this if you have the PS3, or you only have something like this if you have a 360. And if any of you know or have played fighting games with either of these before, in my professional opinion, they suck major ass. The PlayStation 3 controller for fighting games isn't absolutely horrendous. The D-pad on here is pretty solid. This D-pad's been around since the original PlayStation. Hell, it's been around before the analog nubs were put on the original PlayStation controllers. And it's tolerable, but still, once your thumbs get sweaty, it's hard to do special moves, especially combos in games like Street Fighter. It's almost impossible to pull them off once it starts getting slick. And on top of it, not having 3 face buttons on this controller or the 360 controller makes it very hard to pull off moves that require the L1, R1, or L2, R2 buttons to be used. And even back in the Super Nintendo days when I was playing Street Fighter 2 on there, was not a fan of having the R1 and R2 buttons being used for fighting games. Just was very awkward. The 360 controller, yeah, we all know how absolutely horrendous the D-pad is on the original 360 controllers. They seem to have remedied it now with the new 360 controllers that you could purchase separately. But Microsoft, what were you thinking when you made this? This is like a cheap D-pad you would see on a third-party controller from the early 90s. It is the worst D-pad ever. Point being, trying to play a fighting game with this controller is borderline impossible. At least to me. God, just pressing this D-pad right now is just making me angry. So I'm one of those people who absolutely refuses to spend close to $200 on a fighting game and a decent fighting stick. That's how much a console costs, and to spend that much money on 1 or 2 games to me is absolutely ridiculous, and I think it's highway robbery. So there's a YouTube user by the name of Thomas3120. I'll have a link in the description on Blistered Thumbs and have an annotation in YouTube to his channel. Incredible guy, very nice dude, has a ton of cool mods. He's a big retro collector, and his videos are very laid back and easy to watch. I strongly recommend you sub to his channel. Needless to say, Thomas3120 was selling off some of his collection, and one thing he was selling really caught my eye. And the thing that caught my eye was this big bad boy. This is the Hori Fighting Stick 3 for the PC and PlayStation 3. Now, if you do some research on this stick, technically it's a dinosaur. According to Hori's website, it was released in 2007. However, there is still a really big demand for this fighting stick. If you look on Amazon or on eBay, they are still selling it for $58 to $60. Sometimes I've seen it even for $85 if it's new. Not a cheap stick. Thomas, however, sold me this stick for $20. That price I could afford. So let's go into macro mode and take a look around the stick itself. Okay, so you have your programmable turbo, which you can set to fast, normal, or slow. And now the funny thing about this is you literally could designate turbo to any switch or button on this fighting stick. I mean, literally even to the joystick itself. So I was playing, I believe, Streets of Rage Remake, and I didn't realize I set the turbo to the right direction. And I'm sitting there like, why is my guy spazzing out on the screen? I thought there was something wrong with the fighting stick. Nope, like a moron, I set the turbo to the right direction, and that's why I was having issues. So keep that in mind. If you do get this fighting stick, any button on here can be set to turbo. Food for thought. Okay, since it is a PlayStation 3 stick, you do have your home button, your L3 and R3, which are the buttons that are incorporated into the left and right analog sticks. And you have select and start. You have a cherry top joystick with micro switches, which sounds very nice. It's weird. I've used fighting sticks that didn't have micro switches, and the big difference I feel is that you get a little bit of feedback. You actually feel that click when you move. And when you're playing fighting games and trying to pull off combos, it sounds insignificant, but it actually makes a huge difference getting that little bit of feedback that you feel. You have your 8 soft touch buttons. L1, L2, R1, R2. Then you have the normal face buttons you would have on a regular PlayStation 3 controller, X, O, triangle, and square. These buttons handle very well under heavy use. I use this stick a lot with Mortal Kombat and the Streets of Rage remake, and I have no complaints about the performance. They work very well. Now, one thing I want to note with the Hori fighting stick, and the reason why Thomas sold it to me for such a low price, is that he said it did not work on PlayStation 3 anymore. When they had a firmware update, it did not work on his PlayStation 3 console. I personally have not had a problem with it. I had the newest update right before the PlayStation Network went down, and I had no issues playing Mortal Kombat. The stick worked beautifully. But I did want to put that out there just in case there is an issue with certain PlayStation 3s. Who knows? He had an issue with it. I've had no problems with it. So in case you're looking to get this fighting stick solely for the PlayStation 3, keep that little tidbit of information in mind. The only really big, ginormous complaint I have about this fighting stick is there is no place to rest your palms. So when you're playing, you gotta kind of keep your wrist arched. And when I was playing again Streets of Rage Remake, I have the police car dedicated to this button, and my palm would accidentally hit the R2 button, and there were many times I would call the police cars over and I didn't want to. It was very frustrating, and if you try to keep your hand kind of arched like this, it can get uncomfortable. I understand this was Hori's entry-level stick, but I do wish they gave even like an inch more room down here. It would have made a world of difference with this fighting stick. Now it is final verdict time, ladies and gentlemen. Is the Hori Fighting Stick 3 worth your hard-earned money, even though it is a very old fighting stick? Although it's not perfect, I would have to say yes. Now, many of you are going to question my decision on this. If you look on eBay or Amazon, you'll see a lot of no-name brand fighting sticks that look very nice. They look like the expensive $130 ones, and they go for like $20, $30. The feedback I get from people that purchase those fighting sticks is that they are god awful. Sometimes they come brand new right out of the box and buttons aren't working, or the joystick has a really numb feel and is unresponsive. You get what you pay for, and I understand a lot of these fighting sticks, even this old one, is somewhat expensive. But if you're looking for the real deal, you're gonna have to spend a little bit of money, and finding a deal like I found is very rare. So at the end of the day, the Hori fighting stick is a pretty affordable solution that will give you the real deal. It is not an imitation. This is a genuine arcade fighting stick, and I strongly recommend it. Well, as always, ladies and gentlemen, this is Rich of ReviewTech USA. For more gaming and technology reviews, go to ReviewTechUSA.com. Thank you for watching. Playing the Streets of Rage remake with the Fighting Stick 3 is absolute gaming utopia. My nipples are exploding with delight. And don't worry, I won't show you a picture of that.
3 kilobytes.